Welcome to hyCLEANER and welcome also to our video tutorial. I would like to give a short instruction as well as some tips and tricks on how to operate our solarROBOT. Before we start, I would like to point out that this tutorial does not replace reading and acting according to our operating instructions. The instruction manual also takes precedence over the video and we assume the proper use of our machine. This being said, let's start. Our solarROBOT is characterized by the fact that it is very modular. We have already disassembled everything here and are going to show you now how to put it back together. Let's first go through the single parts before. So what we can see here is the standard configuration. We have our chassis with its control unit, the surface display, and the antenna which connects to our radio remote control for operating the machine. Then we have our batteries, which will be placed inside the chassis, and of course we also have a charging station. Then we do have two crawler chassis which are easily mounted onto the chassis, and of course we do need something to clean with, so we do have a brush included as well. Last but not least, the standard includes a hose guide which we can attach to our machine or use on the solar panels. I brought my colleague Emad, who will actually help me to put the machine together. While he will mount the machine, I will explain in more depth what we can see. All right, let's take the first piece, which is the crawler chassis. So we already brought our first accessory here, which is our transport trolley. It is quite handy. It will support us for the easy setup because we will now hook in the two crawler chassis to the left and the right here. Then we will take our next part, which is the chassis or the control unit, which we will snap into these two parts of the crawler chassis here. Yeah, perfect. All right, then we put these two bolts on here to secure the machine. The next step is to attach the crawler chassis to the chassis itself. Emad and I will now show how. Just flip it up with a little bit of power. Great. Next side as well. Yep. And then we have our engines on the both sides that we now need to connect with our control unit. And that's how we do it.
So, und das gleiche Spiel auf der anderen Seite nochmal. Emad, du da einmal hilfst.
All right, our engines are all set, so now the next pieces are our batteries. Perfect. So here, this is our battery, so we switch it on here. Then if we press here, we can see how full the batteries are. We have 4 levels, 100, 80, 40 and 20. Red means it's at 20%. All right, I will switch them off again. Then we do push them in here with a slight kick, and this, of course, on both sides. That's it. We do now have the situation here that our driving pads are already on. We want to show how to actually take them off and how to put them back on again, because we developed the pads with a very simple Velcro tape solution for the easy handling. So this means we now start the machine with the toggle switches, will beep a bit. Then we connect our remote with the machine so that we can show a trick how to easily put on the pads by driving forwards and backwards of the machine. Emad has just navigated it forwards and backwards a little bit, which supports the process by rotating. In the same way, we will also put them back on. So I will start here. I have to pay attention that I put on enough tension so that no bumps will form. Then I will keep it like this and Emad will navigate slowly.
Ganz langsam und dann kann man das hier einfach schön so.
It might be the case that the pads might seem a little bit too long now. So I will just sweep the beeping off for now. So this then here would be the possibility to cut it off along the predefined line. We recommend letting the crawler chassis run through once or twice before cutting the pads, because it is possible that the tension will just give a little bit back again. If it is still too long like this, Emad will show now how to cut off the remaining pad. So very important is always a little in front of the seam and not directly on the seam.
Super, perfekt.
Okay, now we can nearly start. Only the brushes are missing and Emad will quickly go get them.
Einmal noch mal eben und hängt die vorne hier rein.
Perfect. Then we have our water connections that we do need to connect here. Just pull it back and snap it back in. Then there's our brush engine that we need to connect. It is best to put it around the hose twice and then connect it here. It's the same mechanism also on the other side. We are often asked whether it's possible to mix them up by accident, but no, you can't, because these are different connectors. Okay, then there's one last thing regarding the brushes. There's another chapter later on, how to set the brushes correctly. For this, there are these two bolts here to adjust the height of the brushes. How to actually do it and what the right height is, we will cover in a later chapter. The other side must be ignored. It will set correctly during our production process. Great, then there's only our hose guide left, which Emad already holds in his hands, and we'll place it on top. It then needs to adjust it with the bolts. And of course, also here we need to connect the water. Again, same mechanism, pull back, snap, and done. The hose guide is a part that turns 360 degrees, and you can decide whether you want to place it on top of the machine or if you want to use it with sucker plates on the solar panels. But we will show this again later as well. So then we get to the topic of the charging station. Of course, we somehow need to be able to charge these batteries as well. On the subject of the duration of the batteries, this depends on various components like the weights, like how many brushes do I use, what's the level of inclination, but it varies between 1 and 2.5 hours, how long I can clean with it. Let's get to the process of charging. It is important that I first place the batteries into the charging box before I plug in the charging box. So these two batteries, they are pushed in, just like we know from the machine. So just with a bit of power. Right, and then I have to switch them on before I charge. Okay, as mentioned, now plug in the box. The charging process is automatically started. It may take a few moments. Once it's started, this LED light charging is indicating the charging process. So first it shows an orange light, then it will be flashing a little bit faster, and after a while, once it's full, it will show a green light. In the same box, we also charge the batteries of the remote control. It's also simply pushed in here. Two more things are important regarding the temperature. Please do not charge the batteries in direct sunlight. When it comes to not using the machine for a while, like during winter, keep in mind to regularly charge and discharge the batteries, just like you would do with your e-bike batteries. All right, now the same process after charging, the other way around. First remove the plug and then switch off the batteries. Okay, we can almost start operating the machine. There are still a few things that need to be considered. For one, the operating temperature should be a minimum of 5 degrees Celsius and a maximum of 60 degrees Celsius, and the wind forces need to be observed. Wind force shouldn't exceed wind force of 6, which corresponds to 40 to 50 kilometers per hour. The other topic is that the standard configuration includes our edge detection sensor. These needs to be checked each time before operating the machine, and this should ideally not be tested on the panels. We have our transport trolley here again, because then the machine is elevated, which is the situation we require. For this, I start the machine and I use the display for this check. Before I explain, I will show where to find these sensors. Here you can see them, and we actually have them on each 4 sides. When I start the machine, it will start beeping because that's the edge detection that is triggered. Looking at the display, we will find different information. First, we will see the battery level. It's the level of these batteries we checked earlier as well from the batteries. Next, it will switch to emergency stop. That's doing because it cannot find the connection to the remote control. We can ignore this for now because we don't need the remote control to check. So now we push this OK button for 2 seconds, which will guide us to the next menu. And here we will see different versions. This is only meant for remote maintenance purposes. We can press this arrow showing down here to guide through the menu to the next topics. So here we see the tilt. If we place it on the panels, we can also check the tilt on the panels. We currently have 1 degree. Then we see the auto drive, and now we can reach the edge detection sensors. We can see not okay, not okay, not okay. We will check now each single one. For this, I will place my hand underneath every sensor, but we will actually look at the display. So first one, we see okay. Next, we also see okay. Then over here, also okay. And then our last one, also okay. By this, I can be certain that all 4 sensors are fully functional. So the sensors have all been checked. Now there is only one last check before we can operate the machine, which is the tension of our chains. And we will cover this in the next chapter, the topic maintenance. This relates to the chain on our crawler chassis that we see here. To check them, we now need to remove the pads. Since we do only have 1 brush on our robot, we can leave it mounted. If you have 2 brushes, then please just remove at least 1 of them. All right, let's start. We need our tool, the chain tensioner, and we need the machine to be lifted a bit from the floor. And as mentioned, that the pads are removed. All right, Imad will now help me with this, and I will explain a bit more what we are doing. The chain tensioner is placed in parallel to the axis. Then we tighten this wing nut on both sides. In the extension, we see that this protrudes at the back. This is fine. Then it is very important to watch out for this space between the chain tensioner and the chain itself. We do want to achieve a tension of the chains so that the tensioner tool is not touching the chain, but we want a spacing of 12 millimeters. Here we currently only have 10 millimeters. So we will now show how to increase the tension on the chain, and this of course works also for loosening the tension. For this we need this 13 millimeters open-ended wrench, and we will now see how Imad is doing this. Perfect, so both sides are now identical. We need to ensure that we always bring the same tension to both sides and not only on the one side.
Aber das hier passt jetzt und jetzt sind wir ready to go.
Okay, we have successfully checked our chain tension, so this is okay. Now we need to make sure that the wheels are also in parallel and in the right angle to each other. Because if it's not, we might get into trouble with running off the chains or with the grip. Emad still has the tensioner and we will show how to test this. Therefore, we place this tensioner to the side of the chain and then we place the square tube in a way to the wheel that it touches each wheel twice. Then we check this with the other wheel. And we need to ensure that the distance of the points to the wheels is the same on both wheels. And if it's not quite parallel, then we need to retension it on that side like we have instructed before until it is parallel. Now there's one last topic before we show the machine on the solar panels, which is the mode of operation. We have already touched upon multiple things that we need to check before operation. I would like to put some emphasis on the surface condition. There are different things to keep in mind. The machine can operate without extra safety measures like lateral guidance up to 25 degrees inclination without problems. I'm saying without problems, however, the surface condition plays a crucial role in this. With surface condition, I'm referring to severe soiling, for example, on cow barns, where you have to assess in advance until which inclination you can safely operate the machine. So first, check which inclination does your surface have, and secondly, what's the condition to decide if you need extra safety or not. Okay, once I check the conditions, we recommend to clean one panel before placing the machine on the panels. In this way, you can make sure that the pads stay clean and are not dirty before even starting with the cleaning, since this will compromise your grip. Another topic, can I run over maintenance aisles? Yes. If you have a slope like this, you can overrun up to 30 centimeters. If you have flat roofs, you can even overrun up to 70 centimeters. Then I would say, let's place the machine onto the surface. There are multiple ways on how to do this. I can either put the machine back in its single pieces, or I can use other tools. For example, with working platforms. For this, we have developed a crane hook, which I can hook up into my hose guide, so then fasten it to our working platform and lift it up. So we have placed the machine on our pre-cleaned solar panel now. It is important that we start cleaning from the top so that the dirty water finds its way down. Otherwise, the already cleaned panels would be dirty again if we clean the other way around. One last topic, running over the locks that hold the panels together. Driving over us is no problem. So these are the locks here. But it is important that you don't turn on these locks with the crawler chassis, because this puts a lot of force onto the crawler chassis and can lead to running the pads off.
Das einfach nur noch mal ein Tipp, hier drauf nicht rangieren.
We did already mention that the brushes need to be set up correctly, so how to do this we will cover in this chapter. Here we see the different bristles with different length, because background is that the long bristles are responsible to also cleaning the edges and the shorter ones give more stability. We want the brush to clean properly, therefore we need a depth of immersion. For the black one, so the long bristle, this is 2 centimeters, and for the white, smaller ones, it's 1 centimeter. So we can spot here that the white ones do not dip at all, so we need to set the brushes even lower, which we will just show now how to do. We have developed a mechanism on both sides of the crawler chassis with a bolt up here. So we have to check now the exact height, because this can be different on both sides of the brush, because the engine of the brush is on one side only, meaning it makes one of the sides heavier than the other one. And of course, Then both sides need to be checked separately and potentially adjusted. Emad, check. Is it okay? All right, perfect. Now, of course, we want to operate the whole thing again and explain the various functions of the wireless remote control. We will go through the individual buttons of the remote control. You can also look this up again in our operating manual. Here also the frequency ranges are indicated in which the solarROBOT works. This again is just a hint in case a foreign signal should come in between. One of the most important buttons is our emergency stop buttons for dangerous situations. This one is located on the side of the handheld transmitter. If this button is pushed, the machine stops. Great. To start the ready remote control, check whether the red emergency stop switch is locked. If so, this must be unlocked by turning the switch. And secondly, of course, the solarROBOT must also be switched on, which in this case is already done. Then we have to turn the key of the handheld transmitter up. Then press the start push button for 1 second. Then the display will also start, and then press the start push button again briefly, and then a connection to the control unit is established. Okay, perfect. Let's go through what we see. We already see the first functions. First, hyCLEANER is okay, that's the status. The second is the battery level of the robot itself. And then we can quickly use the display lighting up here. Next, we see the first functions here, S3. Down here you also have a button for this. And we can see in the display one drive gear. So that's our driving direction. There's also a second driving direction. So this one Emad has already pushed, so it's changing to the other direction. So it's just simply driving backwards and forwards. And now you can see what it actually means. So we have positioned the robot that it's already at driving direction 2. So we start driving. And when we now move backwards, we don't have to drive the backwards joystick, but we simply just click on S3. Then we see driving direction is changing, and then we start moving forwards again. So then the driving direction has changed, but we are still driving forwards and not backwards. Then we also see S4, wet cleaning. So as the name already reveals, this is how we clean, wet or dry. If we press S4, we can switch to dry cleaning. For cleaning wet and dry, we also need our rotating brush. So here we have a button on the side of the remote control. And if we press this button, the brushes will start rotating. And then if we look at our display again, the LED light also indicates brush on or off. Good, and then there's also on the display the auto drive functionality, but we will show this later. Two additional things. Here we see our battery level of the remote control batteries. When we turn the remote, then we see where to swap these batteries. And these are simply charged with a typical charging station. And on the right, we also see the signal strength from our remote control to the control unit of the solarROBOT. Perfect. Then we get to the driving of the machine. For this, we use this joystick here. There's another special button on top of the joystick, S5, which we need for overriding edges, for example, with maintenance aisles. Very important to notice that the button must be released once the obstacle has been crossed, because otherwise the edge detection is no longer armed. With the joystick, you use this to steer forwards, backwards, and to move right and left. And let's see how this looks on the surface. Now Emad is steering forwards until the first edge is detected. And then we could actually now override it by pushing S5. Important, Emad has released all the buttons so that the edge detection is armed again. Then Emad is driving backwards again, and once we override the maintenance aisle, we will drive until we reach the edge in the front. Perfect. Now the edge detection is triggered and we have a new function to start moving again. We don't necessarily need to push S5 to start driving. If we just drive in the same direction, we see the robot won't move because edge. So the machine remembers in which direction we have been driving. If Emma drives in the other direction, it starts moving again without pressing S5. Perfect. What we also want to demonstrate is the full rotation, because in this case we have two brushes where I can easily move back and forth, but if I just clean with one brush, then I also need to turn once I reach the end of the panels, so that you continue cleaning with the brush. And this function of turning we will show now, and of course this is also done with a joystick by hitting it strongly to the left or right. Great, then there's a speed knob on the lower left. By rotating it left and right, it will increase or decrease the speed. So let's see on the surface. Which speed you choose is of course dependent on the surface conditions, so which soiling level, which weather conditions, and which cleaning result do we want to have. So for better results, you want to be slower. Then let's have a look at the auto drive. This button is at the left side. To activate it, start driving forwards with the joystick and press the auto drive button at the same time. And then you can release the button and the machine drives by itself, of course, until it reaches the next edge. So this is a short area here right now. Then in combination with the auto drive, there is the fine adjustments of the robot up here. When you drive in parallel to the surface, it's by nature, due to gravity, that the robot is dragged a little bit down, so you can use this rotating mechanism to balance it. By the way, when you drive in the auto drive mode, you can also steer to the left and the right just a little bit without stopping. Only if you do jerky movement or back and forth, then it will also stop. So now you do the fine adjustment and then you see how it will drive up a little bit left.
Und dann sieht man jetzt, wie der eben ganz leicht nach links oben gefahren ist. Und dann würde die Linie halten.
We will now quickly demonstrate the emergency stop in dangerous situations. For this, we will start moving and then push in the emergency button on the side. And then we see that the robot stops immediately. Perfect. And then lastly, the key on the remote, which we also use to start, you can pull it out. So this is the brain of the remote control. If you would need, due to any reason, switch the remote control unit, then you could simply push it into the new one and it would have the same settings. And without it, of course, the remote control wouldn't work. A topic that we are also often asked about is the topic water hoses and water connections. Here we have a few tips and tricks. I have brought our water hose as well. You can see here we have an inner diameter of 10 millimeters, and this is the minimum inner diameter that the solarROBOT requires in its supply. Anything used in the water supply upstream should ideally be larger than 10 millimeters inner diameter. Another topic is the amount of water required. On average, it uses 9 liters per minute. Important to remember, whatever I put in at the front also comes out at the back. So if I only put in 4 liters, then probably I won't have enough water to clean properly. Yet another topic is the pressure. At least 2 bar must reach the hyCLEANER and a maximum of 8 bar. An important rule of thumb when it comes to altitude is the potential pressure loss. So every 10 meters of altitude, I lose 1 bar. And one last thing, the water temperature. A maximum of 60 degrees may be used with the solarROBOT. There are a few things to keep in mind when it comes to transportation and safe storage of the machine. With regards to the transportation, we do have the option to transport the machine directly on our trolley. It also has a wheel lock. If you use something other than the trolley, then just make sure that the pads are not on dirty ground and especially that the surface isn't slippery if the pads are on. And when storing the brush, then please make sure that the brush does not rest on the bristles and that the batteries are also not stored in the machine, but rather in their charging box. Our driving pads are made of a special surface material. Accordingly, they need to be well cared for. That's why we have the chapter on cleaning those pads. There's also a pad cleaner for this, which I will show again later in the video. And there's also a useful cleaning bucket that makes the whole thing easier for us. As I mentioned earlier, the driving pads need to be wet before they are used on the surface, and you can see this quite well here again. If we now dip in the dry pads into the bucket, we can see how air bubbles are rising. And this is my indicator that they are still dry. So once they disappear, then we know it's fully soaked with water. Okay, no bubbles, so we can continue with the wringing of the pads. This now shows the actual interesting parts of the cleaning bucket. So I place my feet to the left and the right, and then I can pull up the pads to wring out the water. Alright, this was the measurement before we use the pads on the panels. Now after the panel cleaning, the pads might be really dirty, and for this we recommend the cleaning with our pad cleaner. For this, you just put half of the pad cleaner into the bucket with water and you repeat the process. So if you use the pad cleaner for cleaning the pads, it's important to empty the bucket and refill with only fresh water and then repeat the dipping and wringing 2 times again. Another important topic related to the cleaning of the pads is the temperature. Never wash with water more than 30 degrees. And it is crucial to only use soap that is free of surfactants because those impact the grip. Therefore, always never wash the pads in your washer that you usually use for your clothes because there can also be residues of soap.
Nicht in der Waschmaschine waschen, wo wir sonst normalerweise unsere Klamotten mit waschen, weil da einfach Seifenrückstände drin sein können.
Alright, let's have a look at one of our accessories, our hose reel system. Up to now we saw our hose guide system that was mounted on the top of the solarROBOT, but we can also place this hose reel system on top of the machine or on the solar panels, and we can even use 2 of these hose reel systems and connect them so we can reach 100-meter length in total. How to do this we will show now. There are these double vacuum sucker plates which we can attach to the hose reel so that we can fix it to our panels. The mechanism is fairly simple, just push it in and fasten it by pushing it down. And that, of course, we will do with all 3 of them. Alright, that's done. So let's place it onto the solar panels just by pushing down the levers. We will see that here. Of course, it's best if the surface is just a little bit wet. Alright, now we just need to connect it with each other and then off you go.